Hello, good evening. It is Monday at 8. That's
It's
right. No,
definitely
Tuesday.
not Monday at 8.
It's not Monday at 8. That's
Tuesday,
the other
that's
shows.
it, yeah.
They said, what a professional operation we are. There we go.
Yes.
Yes, welcome to Retro Game Revival live. I'm Triangle Face, or you can people most call me Tim, and I've got Ollie with me this evening. Good evening, Ollie. How are you doing?
Good evening, bud. Yes, not too bad. Finally caught up on some sleep, so feeling a bit more human.
Excellent stuff. That's always good, isn't it, to get some sleep in.
Sleep highly underrated.
And this evening we are joined by Mark Hardesty, who is from Slitherine Games. So thanks very much for joining us, Mark.
Yeah, hello, chaps. It's nice to be here.
Good. Excellent stuff. So yeah, we've got an evening to talk about games and games you've worked on and all sorts of that great stuff. So we've got a few people in the chat, so I'm just going to quickly say hello. We've got Mr. Rob Taylor. Good evening. Thanks for joining us, Rob.
Bit of Dizzy there. I'll be talking a bit about Dizzy, although never worked on Dizzy, but worked with the Oliver twins for many, many years.
Have you? So, we actually saw the Oliver twins this past Saturday.
Did you? How are they?
Yes, very good. They didn't remember. So I spoke to us. Oh, it's nice to meet you in person. So we had you on our podcast last year, and they said, "Oh, did we?" Oh, I don't know. I think they do a lot of podcasts. Yeah. They said, "Oh, was it during lockdown?" Yeah, we did a lot of those. I was like, "Great." So,
I worked with Philip and Andrew for 12 long years, so I know them quite well.
Yeah, they are fantastic. I do like their back and forth sort of banter between the two of them, and they've certainly done a lot of stuff as well. And the thing that I find quite impressive is that not just the work they've done, but how they've really pushed the technology forward a bit. Because they've had the technology at the time saying, well, actually, if we did it this way, that would make this job quicker. And then they've kind of just released that into the ether and other people have used it. And yeah, amazing stuff that they've done.
Yeah.
So, no, very cool.
They had a twin power. It's like this magical power.
Yeah.
They thought the same thought and they really sort of push things forward, as you say. Yeah.
Now, we had a great weekend just gone at Nottingham Video Games Expo. So we were sort of hosting some talks there, introducing the Oliver twins, and they came on and did sort of a slide presentation. And we've had a few other people from various places come up and do different talks. So yeah, it was a great fun weekend. Right, we'll get started with our first topic of the evening, and that's your own early gaming memories. So what first got you into gaming, and what were some of your favourite games and favourite consoles?
Well, if I talk about early gaming memories, I can remember the very first game I ever saw when I was probably 10 or 11. So this would be in the early 80s. And this was in a school. This was in school, and this was a big computer that used punch cards to input data. And it was what I remember in my dulled memory, Zombie Island. This is in school, and it was a very simple square, and there were some zeros, there were some Zs, and there was an M. And every turn, you could move the M, and all the Zs would move one square towards you, and you had to drop them in the hole. And I can remember that. As I say, I was probably 10 or 11, and there wasn't computer gaming anywhere at that point, and I was just like, wow! And again, in your brain, you're laying in ultra graphics over everything that's sort of happening there. So that was the first computer game that I remember. I was quickly on the ZX81 and the Spectrum, which were my main sort of school day gaming platforms, and the sort of the memories for me sort of on the ZX81 was kind of 3D Monster Maze, and it early on it was a lot of sort of the 3D elements that I used to sort of move to. So there was like 3D Monster Maze, there was a 3D Alien game, and there's all these things in sort of 3D that I really enjoyed. But for me, it was the ZX81 and the Spectrum. I mean, the Spectrum, at school, I never really got past that. A lot of friends had sort of BBC Micros or Amstrads kicking about, Commodore 64s, but I sort of stuck with the Spectrum. And yeah, so it was kind of, there was, remembering when Elite came out on there, and I couldn't afford to actually buy it, so I borrowed a copy. And because it had a kind of a crazy sort of pirating thing, so it was like this kind of plastic thing you had to put over a square on the screen, and it would give you a code, because the person who I borrowed it from had that. I left it running on my Spectrum for about, I don't know, 6 days, and you know, the Spectrum was getting quite warm, and just, you know, I just wouldn't turn it off because I knew I just wanted to carry on playing it. So it was the, you know, it was the early sort of Sinclair games, so kind of Ultimate Play the Game, you know, sort of the sort of jetpacks, but you know, it was so early on that it was kind of, again, some of my earliest memories of gaming were games that I had sort of typed into, you know, into my Spectrum. Kind of simple Indiana Jones balls walking up, kind of really basic, kind of cliff edges, and just these really sort of, I mean, you know, you call it retro revival. It's as early as you can kind of go. So yeah, it was mainly those as a kid, and it was that time. I don't know how old you guys are, but it's kind of, there wasn't gaming. There was me, and there was maybe 7 people in the year, you know, who had computers, and that was it. And we were the weirdos. We're the ones who were kind of locked in our bedrooms playing games, and it was kind of, you know,
I think we were kind of there when gaming slowly started to become cool.
Yeah,
you know, I think my very early gaming memories for me would have been BBC Micro.
Oh, yeah.
But I was quite young at the time, so, and I only can remember like dabbling in that and thinking, oh, these, you can make things move on the screen. That's interesting. But I wasn't like immediately into that. It wasn't until we then got an Acorn, like I had an Archimedes computer, and then we started playing stuff like Zool. I can remember playing Zool thinking, this is cool. I think I'm going to be really into this. And I've kind of been into gaming ever since. So, I go back and play those BBC Micro games and have good nostalgia for those when I go and play them. But it's just mad to think how we've gone from that. And like you're talking about, you know, a zombie game with Zeds on the screen. And, I know a lot of people talk about like getting the magazines where you can actually type out the line by line code.
Yeah. Oh,
to get the game line by line.
That was it. The early days, that's what we used to do. You know,
and to go from that to what we've got now, we've got things like Game Pass and VR and all that sort of stuff within that time span is mad, isn't it? How fast things have grown. And
you always see the memes on Facebook. It's kind of 1902 or whatever, the Wright brothers, and then 1969. You know, we're on the moon, and it's like how far we've gone. It's sort of, you know, 1981 Zombie Island. You know. 2015 sort of Dead Rising, boom, the difference. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
It's I think my first sort of foray into gaming was an NES, playing Super Mario Brothers at a parents' friend's house. I remember their kid have their son having one, and being completely transfixed by this funny little, well, I didn't know he was a plumber, but somebody in a set of overalls just running left to right and eating mushrooms. And that was literally my first sort of jump into video games. It was maybe a couple of years before Super Nintendo came out. It was. I definitely never had a home computer, so it's always interesting to hear people talk about, the Sinclair, the Acorns, and Commodores, and all this kind of stuff, because that's just it was just never a part of me, even though it's, I guess, technically the sort of superior, you know, it's almost like the early days of PC Master Race.
Well, it's kind of, you know, obviously talking about the Oliver twins earlier on. It's, you know, it was their bread and butter. They were kind of 50% of the entire UK market on the home computers in their early days. And it was also kind of, there were, you know, I sort of grew up in a sort of a northern town. Like a small northern town, and so I could, in the whole place there were probably at the most 15 or 16 arcade machines in various pubs, swimming pools. You know, there was a local arcade that we had. There was a sort of gambling, but it had sort of Defender, and it was the time when Space Invaders was just like, wow, this is amazing, and just, you know, again, going back to this 3D, this thing just driving along a 3D road made up of white dots on black, and you were just steering that, and that was sort of, it was a kind of mind-bending experience because it was totally new. But you go back now and they're awful. Yeah, my son had there was a rare compilation of games on the Xbox, and going back to those kind of Attic Attack, Jetpack, and trying to get him to play them. And he's like, "What the hell is this shit?" And I'm trying to play. It's quite tricky, you know. They're hard. They are so hard. Some of those early games, but you put up with it.
I think the thing with it as well is how accessible games are now. And if you get something like Game Pass and you jump on a game and it's not great, you just try a different game, and you can like game hop so much quicker now. Whereas like we often talk about when we were kids, you would only get like maybe 1 or 2 games a year. Because you maybe get a game for your birthday, you might get a game for Christmas. If you're really lucky, you might get enough pocket money to buy one other game. And you talk about like arcade machines. Often I wasn't like near an arcade. You might have like a laundrette or something, or a takeaway shop that's got one arcade cabinet in it, and you might get a chance to play on that one game. So it wasn't as accessible then. So when you did get hold of a game, you really kind of got into it and got the most out of it.
If I had spent £3.50 on a cassette for a game, that's all I'm going to get. That was my pocket money for probably 2-3 months. So
we definitely persevered, I think, through some terrible games because we knew that was it for a little while.
But I still think some of the terrible games still. It's I think they were really basic looking, and the play was, but it was kind of, it was like the early days of kind of D&D and role play. As a kid, I can remember it was magical because I was like 11 and 12, and it was just like it's a new thing. And even playing these really simple games, even playing Zombie Island, in your mind, you're filling in the blanks. You kind of in your mind, you're making it more than it actually is.
This is second tangent, seen as the Oliver Twins was probably our first one, but this is why I really like channels like Angry Video Game Nerd, albeit there's like a really hyper character sort of yelling angry obscenities about a game, but what he does is he does kind of highlight all these games that we stuck through because it was the game you got for Christmas, and you know, sometimes they were bad, but you still plowed enough hours into it to try and complete it. Some of those bad games are now incredibly expensive, and it's always the bad games that have become collectible and the bad games that are expensive. And I've never understood that. It's funny what people then deem as rare.
I guess most people threw those away or just didn't buy them. So there's a rarity there.
Yeah.
Exactly. I've always been intrigued to play on the ET game on the Atari, which is like it's quite infamous, isn't it? Because nearly completely broke the industry, and there's allegedly lots of copies buried in a desert or something.
That's true.
Yeah, they actually didn't. Somebody actually dug them all up. I can remember sort of reading about that. And it's like,
it was this infamous thing that they eventually found out. Oh no, they did. They just buried a whole bunch of carts in the desert.
Yeah.
Wow, it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess on my journey on early gaming memories, it's like there was a weird leap between sort of the early to mid 80s, and then it, in some ways, I mean, I stuck with the sort of the Spectrum, but then my next sort of foray, I remember sort of moving to SNESes and sort of the first PlayStation. It was that kind of jump. So there was probably my later teenage years were less inclined on gaming, let's say. So yeah, I think there was a jump. I always find when people like yourselves will be saying, "Oh, I mean, I know Zool," but I often sort of talk, and especially when I was working with the Olivers, we'll probably talk about the Olivers far too much in this thing, and they're sort of saying about Dizzy. Oh, did you play Dizzy? And it's kind of, I've never ever played Dizzy, guys. I'm sorry, because I was in that was the late teens, and I just wasn't kind of into gaming at that point. So there is these dead spots in my life of gaming where it's kind of, like when your first kids are born, it's like, oh, okay, I didn't play games for like 3 or 4 years there because you kind of never have any time. But yeah,
it is one of those things where you sort of like sometimes you have a break from it and then you come back, and you revisit it. I think that tends to happen to a lot of us. I think like I said, when you first get kids and that sort of thing. That's one of them. And then you sort of revisit it and you rekindle that enjoyment of it again.
Yeah.
So how do things move on then from being a gamer and enjoying playing games? How do they move into actually making games and getting involved in the games industry?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I used to do some lecturing, and I've got a whole slide sort of show of kind of how I got into gaming. And sort of very much it's kind of every story is different. If you talk to anybody in the industry, every story is different. I sort of studied art and eventually went to studied graphic design, sort of did York and then Coventry University for sort of 3 years. So this was, it was graphic design, so it's posters and everything. But at Coventry, they had a media department, so I was into sort of film, and my trajectory was going to be going to film, adverts, media, that kind of thing. But because I was still game savvy, and I was fairly tech savvy as well, and I was always into this kind of 3D. It always interested me. Yeah, I can remember watching Tomorrow's World, and with the early kind of sort of 3D renders, and just like it was like wow. And so I kind of specialized a little bit on 3D animation and 3D artwork, and it's it was rough and ready, and you had to teach yourself how to do anything. It wasn't a course at all. It was just kind of, whereas some people were using video to do adverts, I'd bought a semi-powerful computer and had some pirated software that I couldn't save, so I could build stuff. I could save 3D models, but if I animated it, I couldn't save the animation. So I was I was animating all night, rendering and outputting, and then if I closed the computer down, I had to do the animation all again. So it was pretty shonky stuff I was producing, but nobody else was producing it, so you're kind of ahead of the curve. So anything you do, even if it's shit, it was like people were like, wow, look, it's 3D, it's moving about. So I sort of had. I'd sort of dabbled in 3D, done a few little cartoons and whatever in that. And my plan was still, going to an ad agency or going into video. And my girlfriend at the time, so this was kind of at the beginning of my final year, her mother gave me an advert from the Telegraph, the Guardian newspaper, and it was just this big. And it was just for a virtual reality company looking for artists or looking for people. And I was like, well, I'm finished my course. I haven't done all of this, so I'm not going to do anything with this. But I put it in my wallet. I kept it. And then when I finished my course, I was putting out my CV and portfolio to various places. None of it at all gaming, because at that point I did not know there was a gaming industry out there. And I had this advert still in my wallet, and to be fair, it's still in my wallet at the moment.
Amazing.
Because I thought, oh, okay, I sent it off, and this is where I was very lucky. It's a lucky kind of step into the games industry. My CV fell on the financial director's desk on a Friday, and he had just come out of a meeting saying we need another artist to do on the team. And so he said, oh, okay. So he rang me, said, do you want to come in? So on the Sunday, I went in for an interview at the place, and on the Wednesday, I was working there. So it was just this kind of whirlwind. It was within a week I'd got a job and I was working there in a games industry I didn't really know existed in virtual reality. It was a company called Virtuality. They were called W Industries, but they became Virtuality, which were the kind of pioneers of virtual reality experiences. There was the Trocadero down in London where they had it's kind of the big sort of yellow vans. They're like big buckets on your head, and it was just amazing. Kind of walking in, I can remember walking on that Sunday, so it was empty apart from the couple of people who were interviewing me. But there were all these pods and kind of VR machines everywhere, and it was just like, geez, this is like the future. This is amazing. And so that was my first job, was doing VR games as a 3D artist and designer at that point. That was my first role into sort of gaming, which was in here we go, virtuality's 90s and VR. Yeah, there you go. There's some of my games that are in that clip. So the games I worked on were probably the best. The one that I'm most proud of was a game called Zone Hunter, which was like a RoboCop. Walking, you're on a fixed path, walking through a 3D city, and
So what really happened to virtual reality in that time? So I can remember in the sort of early to mid 90s there were talks of VR. I can remember seeing I think there's a game show on TV. I had no idea what it was called. I can remember this game show where somebody had this really chunky headset on, and they're in this pod thing where the floor was they could track on the floor. Yeah, could walk over it and they would move.
Okay, right.
And there's a really basic, rudimentary, polygon-shaped person that was in on the screen that would then walk around. And I can remember once there's a thing I saw in London where there's almost like a ride you paid to go on, and you had this headset on, and he was looking at airplanes. I think it was like an airplane.
That was either Flying Aces. If it was a World War I biplane game, that was the very first game I ever worked on in the industry.
Wow,
which is called Flying Aces.
Yeah, a long time when I played it, so I can't quite remember. I think it was more. I don't think it's biplanes. I think it's more like modern.
The jets. The jets was one I didn't work on. Yeah. No, Flying Aces, just the very first model I ever made was a train that when the programmer put it in, it was like this big to scale. So in a full size world, it was this tiny little thing. So I put it all in the wrong scale because at that point, our tool set was sheet of a gridded paper and a blue pen, a black pen, and a green pen, and you had to draw everything out, type in each coordinate, each vert, and then type in each face and you had to just type it all in, and that's how you put 3D models into the engine at that point. And it was a real ball ache. It was great. It was it was, as I say, VR then, it was on Tomorrow's World. There's some time I was sort of talking about Tomorrow's World. It was cool. It was and over the last 30 years since working there, I have seen the same conversations about VR happen at every single era of VR development. And it's funny. My son got a Quest Pro 2 literally a week and a half ago, so it's only just come into the house. And it's compared to what we had, it's leaps and bounds. But is it 30 years worth of development? It's there's been development in the last few years, but it's still it does the same as what we were doing back in the day, back in the early 90s. Obviously doing a lot better, but it's still the same.
The thing that was that I always remember from sort of really early VR was I've got a real hankering as an adult for terrible sort of late 80s 90s horror movies, and there was one called Arcade, and it was all based in virtual reality, and I just remember at the time thinking, this is amazing. This is never going to get any better than this. The graphics in this horror movie are perfection. It turns out they're not. It's not aged well. Let's see if I can find some screenshots from that as well.
It's managed. It almost felt like the VR. I can remember watching all these things on things like Tomorrow's World and things like, and having a chance to play on one or two things very briefly. There was never a home version, and I didn't see a lot of it in arcades. And it seems just like VR just went away for a while, and then it all of a sudden came back. We can actually do VR now. And now things have blown up a lot, and VR is really popular again. But it almost seems to disappear a bit after the mid-90s, and people stopped doing it. And
well, I mean, it was so virtuality. We did, we sort of sold to places to put experiences on. So it's like the Trocadero, and there'd be virtual reality, as we have now, virtual reality experiences. And there was a little bit that we did for industry as well. But yeah, it was, at that time, it was before its time. It was kind of clunky. The early games didn't have any textures. We eventually did get really sort of basic textures. And we had, I think there were 2 Commodores inside, one for each, because it was stereoscopic. So we had like 2 really sort of basic computers sort of powering it all. And you look at it now, and it's like, it's very retro. Stroke a bit crap. But at the time, there wasn't 3D gaming, and this is again, I think I was lucky because it was kind of, people weren't doing 3D games. When working at Virtuality, we had Sega come across who hadn't done Virtua anything at that point, and there was a lot of kind of collaboration with like the first Virtua Fighter and Virtua Cop. And a lot of like Zone Hunter we were working on, and then Virtua Cop came out, and it's like, oh, okay, there had been discussions about what we're doing and stuff, and so it was just that time when 3D was just starting in its infancy, and it's kind of getting ahead of the curve a little bit on that. It was exciting, but it was kind of, you look back and it's a bit shocking.
I can remember just thinking the VR stuff looked really cool. I couldn't wait for it to, get bigger and be the next big thing. And I generally thought that VR was going to be the next big thing back then. And then it did sort of, like I say, get replaced with some other stuff that became the popular thing. But I'm glad we are where we are now with VR. It's come back, and we're getting some really cool VR tech. So I get to live out my childhood dreams of playing virtual reality games.
Yeah, before we leave virtual reality behind, so my son has just bought Blades and Sorcery. So this is on his Quest Pro, and he's loving it. He said, "Dad, why don't you ever make anything like this? Why don't you make it?" Like, son, let me tell you, I worked on the very first fantasy virtual reality game called Legend Quest, which was a thing, and I did a couple of levels of that, and it's like, I think I said to him, just because he was like, I was there at the beginning. He was shocking. And then I showed him some video of that, and it's like, very good, and just carried on playing because he was just, it's like,
what a great start though to go in something and then go straight into like that really what was cutting edge tech at the time doing. It must have been really cool. So once you were sort of working on that sort of stuff and things moved on, what other games have you worked on in your sort of career in gaming?
So work with. I've had a couple of times sort of part or fully running my own company. So from Virtuality, a group of us kind of left, and we started up like a company called Charybdis, and we made, again, because we had 3D experience, we got some funding from the rock industry, the music industry, and we made a couple of, there you go, David, the Trocadero, sorry, just one of the comments that was the stuff that we're doing, and we started a company in Nottingham. I know you were in Nottingham last weekend, and we did some we did a thing called Super Look Around Division, which was again ahead of its time. You literally would render 6 views and we stitch them together, and so we got funding from the music industry because we had a music video we recorded, and you could look around, you could pan about and sort of see it in full 360. But again, this was many years before tech that was very good came out that could produce that. But whilst we were there, we did a couple of kind of sort of fun, cartoony, kind of Myst-esque games. We did one called Spud, and then one called The Quivering, which is kind of pastiche on sort of horror movies. It was all tongue in cheek. But whilst doing that, we did a real-time strategy game called Machines, which was, we were all sort of playing Warcraft the sort of top down sort of point and click RTS game at the time, and so it was kind of enjoying that and doing a full on 3D version with kind of machines, robots, spider bots, guns, big gorilla mechs, and again it was like it was initially with Probe Games in Croydon, and then got taken up by Acclaim when it was finally released because Acclaim had bought Probe, and again it's this sort of full circle thing. Ahead of its time, you could point and click your way anywhere. You could go into building. You could go into first person on any unit. So you could set your army going, and then you could choose a unit, go into first person, and sort of blast away whilst everything you sort of set up had been going. And crazily, with machines, one of the units in machines is this spider, a spider bot with guns, twin kind of cannons. And the game that I'm currently working on, which is a Terminator game, which I'll get onto later, have spider bots with twin cannons. And it was I was not on Terminator at the very beginning, so these things were designed. So I kind of came on. It's like, oh Jesus, this is what I did again 25 years ago. But this is much better because of course 25 years ago it was ahead of its time, or a bit shonky. So we did a couple of real time strategy games there, and there's a few other sort of games. We did like a rugby game and some other things. And then after Charybdis, I got a job at Blitz Game Studios for 12 years. So that kind of switched from PC, RTS type games. Blitz, it was console, family friendly, franchised games mainly. So, I told the guys before we came on, I have a large box beside me with lots of games.
Oh, let's dive into the box. I'm itching to see what's in here.
Bizarrely, the one that I would say I'm the most proud of, but I would say the one that I would discuss the most is Barbie Adventures. Barbie Horse
I
Adventures.
change it. We don't want me on there. Hang on.
There you go.
And let me move. Hang on. You move me back.
A bit shiny because it's still in the cellophane. I'll probably have a few of those.
Move you there, then do
there
that. There we go. There
we are.
Barbie Horse Adventures. Yeah. So this was for the Xbox. Not the Xbox 360. So it's the original Xbox, and that was, it's obviously for girls and for kids. But there was a review on the sort of official Xbox magazine, which kind of said, this is not a game for me. However, and it went on to praise the game, and we had horse dynamics that we had horse dynamics and control that were pretty good. And the horse would get dirty. If you ran through water, it would clean it. And it was it was a Barbie game, but it was a very passionate team behind it. We tried to do the best that we could. So it's and it's always that one that whenever I'm talking to people, that's the kind of the one that people say, oh, my sister was so into that, or my girlfriend is so into that. She used to talk about that. And there was a kind of thing when it was released that it sort of broke out a little bit, as much as it could do, into the sort of gaming ether, as it were.
Yeah. I feel like I need to pick a copy up now. That's now that it's got exceptionally good like horse physics and this kind of thing. And I feel like I need to add that to my collection.
I think there are full playthroughs on YouTube, which would probably just watching 10 minutes of that would probably do the job.
It's not the same.
No, I know. So there was Barbie. What else have I got in there? So it's a Barbie. Then bizarrely, I went from Barbie to where was that? I saw it there. Reservoir Dogs. I sort of did a tiny stint, very only on the fringes of Reservoir Dogs, and I went to sticking with the doll theme. I went to here we go. There you go. Bratz Rock Angels. So Bratz,
man.
I know. Here we go. There you go. So basically, dolls wearing whore wear, as we used to say internally. Like really slutty dolls. Yeah. And this was, again, it's a sort of similar team that we did Barbie with. So we trying to make as best a job as we can. And it was like it was basically GTA for dolls. You ran around shops and sort of bought and did little tasks and tried on clothes and put slutty makeup on. So yeah, but that was the first one of a number of Bratz games that we did. I just did the first one. I was I think I was a producer on that. So I'd moved from artist to kind of producer, sort of whilst the Blitz. So there was a couple of doll products. I then did a stint on. There we go. As I say, I was on the fringes of that, but I also thought it was a good juxtaposition between sort of Barbie.
quite a big leap, isn't it, to go from Barbie to Reservoir Dogs, isn't it? It's not quite the same, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a really kind of a zombie game that we were working on, and it was never released. As 50% of what you do is never released. So going from like Barbie to zombies to Bratz was always interesting. Whilst at a Blitz, I guess my longest stint was Karaoke Revolution presents American Idol. So this was So this is with lifelike avatars of your 3 American Idol judges. So that was initially Karaoke Revolution. There was I always forget the name. Who are the people who did Guitar Hero? They were doing Karaoke Revolution, and we kind of what's the name? I forget all the time.
I'm looking down. I can't for the life of me remember that.
But we went across to see them because we went on a trip, and it was either Ratatouille or Karaoke Revolution. And myself and my lead coder, Martin, who's I'm still a mate with, we went across to America with Philip Oliver, and we sort of saw these, we met up with THQ, who were sort of pushing Ratatouille, and met up with the company. And they had a guitar, and they said, and it hadn't been released. And they said, this is the next thing we're doing, which is like, it's like rhythm action. It's like the start of something massive, sort of seeing that before it sort of actually came off. So yeah, we did kind of Karaoke Revolution. It was the developer, not Activision, the developer who sort of did that.
Is it Harmonix was the first one?
Harmonix, yeah, there you go, Harmonix, yeah. So it was Harmonix. They had done the original Karaoke Revolution. And so, yeah, I did probably 3 or 4 years of karaoke games at Blitz. So that was, and again, it was whatever you do in the industry, or whatever I've found I've done in the industry, you try to do your best with it. So that was kind of, it was going across to the States and meeting Randy Jackson and Simon Cowell down in London, and recording loads of VO and doing face scans with them. And it was, it was a fun thing to work on, and sort of testing was humming into a microphone to sort of test the game out. So I did that. And then sort of did a Puss. I was producer on Puss in Boots, so that was the movie, the first movie that kind of came out, which was I don't know the year anymore, which was the start of my my Shrek journey, which I'll touch on. So we did the game of the movie. So this was on Connect. And
is that one that you worked on the Oliver twins with? Then?
Yes,
so
they did a bit. Yeah.
So they did. They said they did like a Puss in Boots game with a Connect.
That was the one. Yeah. So I was the producer. I was kind of the producer on the game, and had a really good relationship with DreamWorks. So went across to the studios, met up with the team, the movie team, the sort of directors and all the heads on the movie, and sort of talked through on that, which was, and it was exciting. It was kind of, it was kind of sort of the movies I was into, and being able to see kind of rough cuts before they come out. It's just, there was kind of the geek in me was kind of really happy to sort of be involved with that. And so, so there was kind of from Puss in Boots, there was a stint on a Disney game that never got released. The company did Epic Mickey and Epic Mickey 2.
Right, yeah. Amazing games.
There was we started doing Epic Donald, which was a Donald Duck version of it, which was kind of,
and then that never got released.
No, but it was the sort of Disney side. It was a point where we were going to head up the game, and the Disney studio was going to sort of almost help us, rather than on Epic Mickey 1. We helped the Disney studio. Epic Mickey 2 we led, and the Disney studio helped us. And then on Epic Donald, but it was the point where the sort of the roller coaster the industry is. It was Disney's. They got rid of a lot. So that I'm glad, because it would have been a hellish project to have done. It would have been a massive project. It would have been trying to manage over a number of time areas. Sort of dealing with America all the time. It would have been hard going. Dealing with Disney would have been hard going.
Is there any concept like artwork or anything for Epic Donald in the ether? Because
there is. So we used original artists from the comics to do some of the concepts. I do have some. I've probably signed NDA. I probably wouldn't release. I have seen it online though. I have seen not the bits that I've got, but I've seen kind of clips. It was kind of time travel, and it was going to be sort of 2 or 3 time periods at the same location, so you could kind of jump back and forth in time. And it was building on the sort of history of Duckburg and Carl. I forgot his name.
Scrooge McDuck.
Well, but the creator of the Donald Duck comics, Carl something, I can't remember his name. And it was looking at Scrooge and all of the sort of history behind that area of Donald Duck. So less the Disney, what you would think of Donald Duck, Mickey's Clubhouse, and all this kind of stuff, but more kind of Duckburg and sort of
more DuckTales kind of style ones.
Along those lines.
I'm wondering if some of this is it.
Let's the top. Yeah, well, that one actually, that's the Epic. I don't know how that got there, but that was a demo that we did. So of Donald for Epic Donald. There you go. That was one of the early demos that we sort of did, just trying to show the visual style that we were going for. Some of the concepts on the left are, I think some of those might have been, like that top left one could have been one of the ones that we sort of commissioned. Some of the early concepts. But it as I say, I was
maybe not these.
So some of these are from Epic Mickey, like the Donald Duck. So
that's
it's
incredible.
nice. It's nice that it's out there, but it's not something that's very well known that there was going to be this huge thing. So after that at Blitz, I then sort of headed up a team doing some mobile games, and I did myself and somebody else kind of came up with the idea of an alarm clock with a character, and so we did Wake Up with Donald, because hey, guess what? We had some 3D models of Donald being animated as an alarm clock. So you put in, as an alarm, and Donald would be like, in a Donald Duck voice, wake up, come on, using the proper Donald Duck voiceover artist. So we did all that, and there was going to be a Minnie Mouse one and a Mickey Mouse one as well. So the Donald Duck alarm clock was released, and at the same time as that, doing Wake Up with Donald, I was also doing a Shrek alarm clock. So it was the same engine. So I was working with Disney and DreamWorks at the same time. The producers, the publishers, at Disney and DreamWorks were both called Keith, and so it was always confusing because it was kind of making sure I knew which one I was talking about. The Shrek alarm got released as well. Nobody will know about it. It was released. It didn't. It did what it did. The Disney one was pushed by Disney quite a bit, and there's some nice trailers of it on there. And I've still got it running on an old iPad, because it's a usual thing now. they just disappear. As soon as there's an update, it's like, yep, can never play that again.
Yeah.
Which is always sad. So after doing that, it was at a time when Blitz Games was making a transition. I'll say that, which meant that a number of people within Blitz, after doing those, Blitz no longer existed, although they sort of transitioned to another company working on some of the similar games they were already working on with Blitz. But it meant that myself and another 100 people were no longer working at Blitz. But because I had a good deal with Disney, I had a good relationship with DreamWorks, I basically did some stuff for Disney as sort of separate little company, and did some stuff for Disney to carry on with the alarm clocks. And I sort of contacted DreamWorks and said, I'm looking to start a company. Can I grab the license for Shrek and take the assets? I managed to get all the assets, bought the assets officially from when Blitz changed. And sort of got funding to do a game called Pocket Shrek, which was using a lot of the assets that we had and some new ones. And it was the time of Talking Tom, so it was a character app. And you had very nice looking Shrek, Donkey, and Puss in Boots. And you could tickle them, make them fart, and play little mini games. And again, so I had a company called No Yetis Allowed, and it was free. Pocket Shrek was released free to play. We eventually got about 7.5 million installs, but the very first release, we got, I don't know, it's probably about 500,000 installs, on the first weekend when it was released, and we just hadn't got the sort of the finances of the app working. A month later, if we'd have released with what we had a month later, we would have made money rather than not making money when we first released. So No Yetis Allowed. It was my stint in mobile gaming. It was a really small company. It was myself. It had sort of 3 or 4 coders, some artists, and No Yetis lasted for about 7 or 8 years. And we did Pocket Shrek. We did a Peter Rabbit. If you have children with CBeebies, so it was the cartoon Peter Rabbit. So we had that license, and we did another character app. And then we did because I'm a fan, we did a Judge Dredd mobile game as well.
Nice.
Which started off as it was going to be a character app, but it turned into a kind of a sort of a game. And again, we were a small company, and everybody was wanting GTA in Mega City rather than we produced it was a little card game, a fighting card game, which was very much focused on the comic. It was like the comic style, and used a lot of the sort of 2000 AD and sort of 2000 AD and Judge Dredd writers and artists. So and then then No Yetis Allowed didn't exist anymore, and got a job at Slitherine. So where I am today.
So where now? There we go.
So that very rambling 40 minutes, I apologise, is kind of my experience.
No, don't apologise for that. Got some great stories there of working in games. So it's great to hear. Bad to think about just keep coming back to that Epic Donald level was.
I know.
And it's weird. I always think it's weird that there's so many good Disney games, and it's obviously when you think of games, you think of Mario and Sonic and things like that. But there's actually loads of really good games where the main protagonist is Mickey Mouse. I used to really like World of Illusion and Castle of Illusion.
Yeah.
The one we would be Mickey or Donald, or you could do the co-op, couldn't you, with both? They had the little blankets that would turn creatures into flowers and stuff. And it's the gameplay of those ones are just really good. They hold up really well when you go back. And then things like Kingdom Hearts. I love the Kingdom Hearts games. You got Donald and Goofy with you, and then you're chasing down Mickey, and it's just mad how much of that has had such a big influence in games as well, and how there's so many games that feature those characters.
It's licenses and it's recognizable characters. You kind of it sells boxes. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's slick. And
Yeah.
Disney, Disney won't release stuff that's crap. Really,
Yeah.
they have a quality bar that you have to hit.
Yeah, I think that's probably like a really good point, because I don't think there are that many bad Disney games. But then when you look back to like the old LJN days, where you had, they had every license going for things apart from Disney, and just some of those games are not good.
Yeah.
There's a handful that have stood the test of time, but by and large, if it's got that rainbow on it, that's a real stamp of disapproval. But all the Disney games are great.
Yeah,
I think I'd be hard pressed to think of a bad Disney game now you mention it. Like even like, and it's carried on from each generation. I remember there's lots of really good Disney games on the Mega Drive, like Lion King,
Aladdin. Aladdin.
Yeah, there's some really good ones there. Some of the best Mega Drive games are Disney, and then even on the PlayStation 1, I can remember the Hercules game was really good. That one I spent a lot of time on. So yeah, no, there's definitely a good track record there.
Yeah. I mean, with Disney, just before we get off that, we had Warren Spector was heading up Epic Mickey and Epic Donald. So just from a kind of kudos of having such a sort of industry kind of colossal being involved, and just chatting with him was just even though it got canned, it was still worth everything. Yeah, he was like a massive Disney fan. They had the Disney Vault, which is kind of which he had access to, and he's very cool. He was cool. He was as rock and roll in the industry with Disney as possible.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we have sort of segued on nicely onto Slitherine.
Slitherine, yes. So I kind of live close to Slitherine. I'll be totally honest here. Like, before I got a job at Slitherine, I hadn't heard of Slitherine games. And although some of the games I actually owned way in the past, like kind of Close Combat, kind of early versions, I'd sort of had kind of copies of that. So I kind of, they're close, and the first 6 months was during COVID and lockdown, so I wasn't in the office for 6 months. I didn't actually meet anybody for quite a chunk of time. So, but it's great, and they're such a good company. Like the guy who runs it, Ian McNeil, it has this kind of family feel to the company. I mean, we're big now. We're kind of 100. Kind of people all over the world. We've got the sort of marketing's over in Milan, head office in Epsom. We've got people in America and Eastern Europe, and there's sort of developer. We've got developers kind of scattered about, but we're it's a publisher. So it's very interesting for me, because it was the first time now I am a publisher. I have been a developer for kind of 25 plus years, and now I am in that sort of the evil publisher. Who I used to always kind of how do we please these people, but it's been great. We produce a lot of games there, and we've got a number of producers who have a batch of games each. So at any point we've got sort of maybe 5 or 6 games we're sort of producing individually. So at the moment I'm kind of producing Starship Troopers, which was released about a year and a half ago, and has done very, very well for Slitherine.
I also have from playing it at WASD.
You got the T-shirt. See, I had a look just about an hour ago before we started. I had a look for my T-shirt. My cupboard is just a total mess. I thought I should be wearing that, really. It's a fun game. It kind of
present a trailer I've got here.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If I do that, let's do that. So we'll have that running.
Here we
go. I mean, this for me was a really big sort of draw at something like WASD, where there's a lot of stalls. I think me and Tim have said so many times now that when we turned up, we thought we're not going to need 3 days here.
Yeah, like it's like that big. We were very wrong.
Yeah, transpires we could have done with at least another 3 days to play everything. But this was like Starship Troopers is a big kick for me. That's something that will always draw me in. Definitely. And I believe we got a chance to sort of talk to you briefly while we were there. and you sort of saying that, you know, give it a go. It is, you know, like a tactical game. However, it's maybe tactical
accessible.
light.
It's
accessible
very
to people that aren't
accessible,
good at RTS games.
It's I mean, it was in development a long time, and it wasn't so much from a technical point of view, but it was like finding the right Starship Troopers game for an RTS type game. You know, it kind of, you know, infantry are very expendable. You have a lot of human death, and it's that churn of bodies that you're getting. And again, you know, the bugs are kind of this churn of bugs that you're just kind of mowing down constantly. But yeah, I think it kind of captures the feel of Starship Troopers nicely.
Yeah. I would completely agree. That first battle that they have when they land on Clendathu in the movie is just, it's chaos, it's carnage, it's frantic. And actually, for my first experience playing, because I did play it a couple of times, that was probably my first experience. Like, there's bugs. What do we do? Click on stuff, drag things, make them shoot. Panic. Yeah, it was fantastic. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
it's very nice, that very first sort of training mission where it's like, right, you've got to extract out, get out, and you're kind of running, and you know, you just see the dropship take off. It's like, whoa, and it's like, right, let's stop here. You know, it's kind of, there's no way you can survive, which is trying to sum up that whole kind of Starship Troopers, you know, life is cheap feel to it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, Starship Troopers has done really well. We've got a couple of DLCs out. We just released Urban Onslaught, which is like set in a big metropolis with kind of new units and sort of like hover snipers that can position on buildings and sort of take things out. And more to come on there as well. So it's you know, it's there are different DLCs sort of planned, and there's a new mode that's being looked at the moment, just to sort of bring a bit more fun to the experience, let's say. So that's Starship Troopers. I mean, I got Terminator, sort of working on that. That was kind of released last year. Wow. This is Terminator Dark Fate. There you go. So this is from the sort of.
Sorry, I do love a bit of Terminator. That's because you've got all these different like big name franchises to work on as well. Working on Starship Troopers and Terminator. Like, what a thing to add to your list of stuff you've worked on.
And it's all stuff like, work on. It's that thing of kind of, you know, when Starship Troopers the movie came out, and you know, we're into like Warhammer, and there wasn't any sort of Warhammer footage. It was as close to what we sort of were playing at the time, so we were like, yay, you know, it's kind of young 20-somethings probably at that point. It was like a movie that made a difference. And Terminator, I always say, as a student, I had a huge Terminator Arnie sort of, you know, with a gun poster in our lounge. And to be sort of having some kind of input, you know, it's the Dark Fate timeline. It's the latest movie. It's not the Skynet timeline, but you know, you have some input into the lore of Terminator. It's just cool.
And, you know, it really is. And I know that, I mean, Dark Fate sort of, it's weird. I liked it.
Dark Fate's it's a good film, but the first 5 minutes pisses everybody off.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And it's only on reflection once it's happened, and then everything else in the movie happens. But it's only on reflection and a couple of rewatches that you kind of get that as the point. It's almost like they've kind of gone, look, you really just I like it.
I not too long ago went back and rewatched all of Terminator, actually, because like every now and then me and my wife go like, oh, should we watch through like a trilogy or a series, and we'll watch over a series of nights, or you know, watch it one every Friday for a few weeks, and you know, we'll do like all the X-Men films or all the Batman films, and one day we're like, right, should we watch all of the Terminator films? I went back and rewatched them all, and a lot of them that in the past I think maybe I judged too harshly, I really enjoyed. I was like, actually, Terminator 3 was all right.
I still judge.
They're all good films, but
I still judge T3 harshly.
See, I didn't think it was. I remember thinking, oh, you know, it wasn't as good as the other ones, but I went back and rewatched it. It's like it was good. I thought
I liked it. The last act is where the movie really flies. seeing actually Skynet take over. But there's just a handful of things that I just can't get out of my head. I will never ever forgive the writer for Talk to the Hand and the Star Glasses. I just oh dear.
I can remember coming out of the cinema after seeing T3 and saying that was a very enjoyable roller coaster ride. That's my memory. But I totally get, Ollie, what you're sort of saying there. It's kind of a lot of working on the current sort of Terminator Dark Fate game is the balance between the fans' reaction to the film, because we got the license before the film was released, so we don't have any characters from the movie in the game. It's set in a different period, and we sort of went for something that gave us freedom. This is still the Terminator universe. You're basically fighting against T-800s. They are Legion. They are called Legion. They are not Skynet T-800s. They're Revs, they're called. But they look, they're the same. They look the same, really. And we just try to set something in a sort of time period, kind of in between Judgment Day and what was seen in the movie, which, it was kind of, it's a lot of sort of, what would have happened post Judgment Day as humanity's trying to fight back, and just kind of stuff that you've not seen. We didn't try to emulate the movie, but no, it's great. And there's more DLC, there's more story coming. We've got a DLC for the end of the year, which is focused on Legion. You play Legion, but it kind of follows the story from the first game that we've done. Just from a different perspective, and sort of moves on a little bit. And there's more, there's hopefully a number of years of development here. And my grand plan is to take the story. There's maybe at the most 4 or 5 minutes of future footage in the movie that we see, where we see the Grace character, spoilers, sort of fighting these kind of Rev nines who sort of split, and they're all bladed, and the sort of tech that the Resistance have. And it's like my grand plan is to take us to that sort of position where the tech meets what was shown in the movie. But at the moment, we're like 7 years before that. So there'll eventually be augmented humans and a new tech and new Revs. Obviously, they're sort of split and sort of. So it's great. It's really fun sort of working on that, and I do enjoy a bit of Terminator.
I think we all do like a bit of Terminator. Like I say, it's one of those difficult ones, is it? Where like the first two are so iconic and they're so great. Whenever they add new stuff to it, it's hard to live up to that expectation, isn't it? Of something as good as Terminator 2, for example. It is one of those. As you say, it is actually probably one of the top 5 classic sci-fi movies of all time, and you can't really better that. So whatever you produce will never be as good as that. But talking with Skydance, who are the IP holders of the Dark Fate IP, so they did the Dark Fate movie. They sort of say, whenever you get criticism, it's like it's just more Terminator content. It's like it may not be for you, but there'll be people who like it, and it's different. It's good that it's different. It's more stuff. So it's kind of, we were happy with the reception, and the sort of, there wasn't that much sort of, it's not Skynet, I'm not going to play this. There was a little bit of that, but there wasn't too much, because it's a good game.
This is it, isn't it? A good game is a good game, and a good movie is a good movie. So the fact that Dark Fate was a good movie, and the game is clearly a good game as well, it ticks a box.
We've got we have sort of just come to just over an hour, but we do have some questions in the chat, so we've got time for a few cheeky questions if we can right at the end. So we've got a few starred questions from some people in the chat, so we'll just go through some of these. We've got a few from Dave Newland. He said, question 993, what are your hardware limitations and how do they affect your creativity?
Well, in 1993, I don't know if you sort of like the tools that I started using as a 3D artist was literally pen and paper and then typing in coordinates. So you couldn't be creative, kind of, even if you had sort of nice concepts, it was hard to create anything that was more than that was boxy. I mean, you look at the early footage and kind of, everything's pretty basic. That for me as an artist, that was probably the biggest hit when I first sort of started working in virtual reality. The tool set and kind of a lot of the stuff is just learning on the job because people hadn't been doing this. There wasn't a plethora of 3D games out there at all. But it was just we didn't have texture mapping when I first started, so everything was just kind of flat colors. So if you're trying to make there was lots of checkerboards for floors because we could do that, and it gave you good spatial awareness for that.
Yeah, excellent. We do have a couple here from Dave. So, Tim, you're on mute, buddy.
So I was typing in my keyboard. I didn't want people to hear me tapping away because I was looking up this to see if there are any. I didn't know there were any Reservoir Dogs games. Was that the only Tarantino game made?
Could have been. I don't know. I mean, as I say, I was really on the fringes, like probably maybe a month in a sub designer group way off. So I wasn't in the main game at all. But I know when they went to whoever owned the IP. Sort of the team that went to try to get the IP, they all went in the iconic suits, and they had like a 7-ear that they'd made.
Nice.
They went for it. And for Blitz, which is a fairly family-based game, doing Reservoir Dogs, I think it's probably the first game with fucking. And sort of the game is the heist that you don't see in Reservoir Dogs.
That's how I didn't even know that game existed. I'd love to go.
Yeah, you could kind of play from the different characters' perspectives. So yeah.
Do you know? I think I would probably enjoy that more than the film because I have a very unpopular opinion of Reservoir Dogs, and that it just doesn't do it for me. But I like the dialogue. I don't know. There's just something about it that doesn't flow. I'm sort of. I like a lot of Tarantino's movies, but there's a couple that are misfires for me.
I was just looking at the list saying if there's other Tarantino games, we could end up waffling on this topic, so I'll make this quick. Is there not a Kill Bill game? Like Kill Bill would have made an excellent game.
Great game.
An excellent game. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about what a potential Kill Bill game would be like because I'll be here for ages. So we've got here. I was going to ask. I was interested in this as well. So, what would you say was the reason VR didn't initially take off back in the 1990s?
Because the headsets were like having a bucket of bricks on your head.
Mm-hmm.
The quality of the visuals were very pixelated and blurry, and when you were playtesting them, your eyes would bleed after hours of testing the game. No, I mean, the quality of the hardware was. It was early. It was brilliant for what it was, but it was it was too early. It wasn't mass.
Yeah.
And even now, I mean, I think I sort of said early on, kind of 30 years on, leaps and bounds over what it was. But whenever people are sort of, whenever you look at kind of Ready Player One and people are, the world's going to be virtual reality and MetaQuest and Mark Zuckerberg, and it's just like, you're still having the same conversations we had 30 years ago about what you could do. And it looks brilliant, and the tracking is amazing, and you got everything just in this headset. But man, it's the public are very lazy people.
Yeah.
and putting a headset on, the 20% of you will want to vomit after half an hour. That's the
thing, because I personally love VR, and I don't get any motion sickness. And enjoy playing it, but I know a few people say, "Hey, check out this VR headset." They've gone to play it, and after a few minutes, they're like, "Oh, I gotta take it off because it's making me feel queasy." And so that immediately limits your audience, doesn't it? If you've got people that like games but they just can't do VR for whatever reason, it's going to limit how many people can play it, which is a shame.
Randomly, does anybody still have access to those old virtual reality headsets and kits?
Yes, they do. There is a museum in Leicester.
Right,
Leicester or Nottingham, that has it all. If you were to check online, and he has open days, and he has I've got a folder of crappy concepts that I produced. Like, I'm not a very good 2D artist, which I'm going to send up to him at some point. Like like a storyboard of Zone Hunter and early sketches that I did of that.
Yeah.
And he's collecting it all, and he's got a few of the kit and everything. And
Does he let you?
Game running.
Does he let you play them as well?
He lets you play them as well.
Because that I think for me, regardless of all the leaps that we've got and all the tech we've got, that seeing things like that on things like Games Master and everything like that, that for me would be a little childhood dream, I think.
Yeah.
So, Tim, we're going to Leicester or Nottingham. One of the two. We're going.
Got a question from our own Blunners. He could make it on this evening, but he's in the chat. And he said, if you could work on any game, what would you pick and why?
It's interesting that because if you're a fan of something, then it's a danger to work on a game of that thing. I was a huge RTS fan back in the day and did a couple of RTS games and didn't play RTS games for 20 years after that. You know, I'm a huge Judge Dredd fan and did a Judge Dredd game and kind of, I'm still a Judge Dredd fan, but it becomes a job. So to be honest, it's a weird one because it's like, you know, I'm a producer now. And so I would love to make a game that lots of people play. I say this is a crappy sounding answer, but it's like that lots of people play and enjoy and makes money, really, whatever that is, because it's kind of, again, it sounds sappy. I remember kind of really early on just wanting to do stuff that impacted on people's lives, and just, you know, just making something that actually kind of hits the masses. You know, like Pocket Shrek there was 7.5 million people that installed that, and so you know, not everybody would have played it. Not people might have played it for a minute or 30 seconds even, but it's like, okay, there's 7.5 million people that, you know, from an idea that I'd have had and pushed through, it got out there. So so because, you know, it's different as a producer and a developer. As a developer, you know, as an artist, it'd be creating worlds and stuff. But as a producer, something that can be scheduled, get on time, and you know, again, you know, like makes its budget back. That's a really cynical. There are games I would love to work on, but you know, as I stand at the moment with my full honest face on, it's like something that makes money and isn't too hard. There you
go. We've got one last one here from Toxo saying, did you find the media tie-ins a boost or a restriction?
I would say 90% of the stuff that I worked on is IP based, and I really enjoy that. It's kind of what I enjoy, working with the IP holder and sort of managing all of that. And in most cases, it's a boost. If you have a good relationship with the IP holder, then you know they're not too restrictive. Everything has a restriction. Working with Disney, you know, Mickey Mouse looks a certain way, his ears work in a certain way. You have to sort of adhere to the sort of the various Bibles of all these kind of characters and IPs. But yeah, it's enjoyable and it's recognizable. The first RTS game that we did, Machines, was a really good game, but it was like nobody really, you know, they didn't know what it was. It wasn't sort of marketed very well. You know, if what had we done then had been a Terminator game, we'd have sold 10 times as many units. So you know, it's kind of it's what I do. I love working with licenses. It's kind of it's kind of what I enjoy. So yes,
excellent. Yeah. Very cool. So thank you very much for your time. Thanks for giving us so much of your time. We see we've been here for a while, and it's now gotten progressively darker where I am throughout the stream. It was quite bright at the start, and it's now getting late. So, well, thanks everyone as well in the chat for watching us. Is there anywhere where people can sort of follow you on any social platforms, or is there anything else you want to plug before we sign off?
I exist. You know, there's me and there's another Mark Hardesty in the industry, so they've got a 50% chance of getting the right one. I'm not the one that has a book on Gremlin games out. And yeah, I mean, if you check out sort of Slitherine and various discords around there, you know, that's where I exist at the moment.
Yeah,
so,
and Slitherine's got a huge library as well. While I was looking up some games in Slitherine, there's tons and tons of games on there. So yeah, really cool site to go check out and look at some of those games.
Yeah, when I first joined Slitherine, and you get every single game on your Steam. And suddenly it's like from like 3 Steam games, it's like 150 Steam games. It's like Jesus.
Wow.
But
well, what a nice perk when you join a new company. It's like, you joined. Here's 300 games.
I know.
Fantastic stuff. Well, thanks very much again for joining us, and thanks everyone for watching. And we'll see you next time. We're back on Monday with ModCons. Is that right? Have I got the scheduling right, Ollie?
I believe it is. Yes.
ModCons. Excellent. Enjoy ModCons on Monday because I'll be on holiday. So
yes. Excellent.
Right, thanks very much, everyone. I'm waving on this side of the camera and my hands disappeared. There we go.